Maria Santos stood at the edge of the military recruitment office, her worn sneakers creating small clouds of dust with each nervous shuffle. The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the concrete steps where a dozen young men waited in line, their voices carrying crude jokes about women in combat. At 17, Maria had already seen more hardship than most of these boys could imagine. Her father had died in a factory accident when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a seamstress's wages. Maria had watched her mother's hands bleed from needle pricks, working 16-hour days to keep food on their table. The sight of her mother collapsing from exhaustion one evening had planted a seed in Maria's mind that grew stronger each day. She would find a way to change their circumstances. The military offered structure, purpose, and most importantly, a steady paycheck that could support her family. But Maria wanted more than just a desk job or kitchen duty. She had spent countless hours at the local shooting range with her uncle Roberto, a Vietnam veteran who recognized something special in her steady hands and unwavering focus. While other teenagers were at parties, Maria was learning to read wind patterns and calculate bullet trajectory. "Next," barked Sergeant Morrison from inside the office. Maria stepped forward, ignoring the snickers from the boys behind her. "What do you want, sweetheart?" Morrison barely looked up from his paperwork, his tone suggesting he had already decided her fate. "I want to be assigned to a rifle unit, sir." Maria's voice was clear and confident. The entire room erupted in laughter. Morrison finally raised his head, his weathered face showing a mixture of amusement and irritation. The other recruits exchanged glances, their grins widening as they anticipated the show. "A rifle unit?" Morrison leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Little girl, do you have any idea what that means? We're talking about real combat, not playing soldier in your backyard." Maria's jaw tightened, but she maintained eye contact. "Yes, sir. I understand exactly what it means." "Listen, honey." Morrison's voice dripped with condescension. "Why don't you consider something more appropriate? We have excellent programs for women in communications, medical support, or administrative roles. You could learn valuable skills that would help you find a nice office job when you get out." The suggestion hit Maria like a slap. She had heard these same dismissive words her entire life. Teachers who steered her away from advanced mathematics because girls weren't natural problem solvers. Coaches who cut her from the track team despite her superior times because they needed those spots for boys who would take it seriously. Employers who hired less qualified male candidates because they were more reliable, long-term investments. "I don't want an office job," Maria replied, her voice gaining strength. "I want to serve my country in combat. I want to carry a rifle." Numb. Morrison's expression hardened. "You want to carry a rifle? Do you have any idea how much an M16 weighs? Have you ever fired a weapon in your life? Combat isn't some video game. Sweetheart, when bullets start flying, you need soldiers you can count on, not someone who's going to freeze up or get her teammates killed." The room had gone quiet now, all eyes on Maria. She could feel the weight of their skepticism, their certainty that she would crumble under Morrison's interrogation. But instead of backing down, Maria felt something ignite within her. "I've been shooting since I was 10 years old," she said evenly. "I can field strip and reassemble an M16 in under 2 minutes. I know the effective range, the muzzle velocity, and the ballistic coefficient of every round it fires. I've studied military tactics, combat formations, and survival techniques. I'm not here to play soldier, Sergeant. I'm here to be one." Morrison's eyebrows raised slightly, but his skeptical expression remained. Knowing specs from a manual and actually performing under pressure are 2 very different things. Combat requires split-second decisions, physical strength, and mental toughness that most men struggle with. You think because you've shot some tin cans with your daddy that you're ready for war? "My father is dead," Maria replied quietly, and the room seemed to shrink around her words. "He died working 16-hour shifts in a foundry to support his family. I've watched my mother work until her fingers bled to keep us fed. I've taken care of my younger siblings while other kids were playing. I've seen more real hardship than half the boys in this room, and I've never quit on anything in my life. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Morrison studied her face, looking for cracks in her composure. When he found none, his approach shifted to outright intimidation. "All right, let's say I believe you can shoot," he said, standing up to tower over her small frame. "What happens when a 200-pound enemy soldier comes at you with a bayonet? What happens when you're carrying a wounded teammate through hostile territory? What happens when you're in a foxhole for 3 days, with no sleep, no food, and enemy fire keeping you pinned down?" Maria met his gaze steadily. "The same thing that happens to any soldier in those situations. I adapt, I survive, and I complete my mission. My size might be a disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat, but it's an advantage for stealth and mobility. I can move through terrain that would slow down bigger soldiers. I can fit into defensive positions that others can't use. And when it comes to marksmanship, size doesn't matter at all." One of the waiting recruits, a stocky boy with arms like tree trunks, couldn't contain himself any longer. "This is ridiculous. She's going to get real soldiers killed. Combat units aren't summer camp. People die out there." "Yeah," added another. "What happens on her first deployment when she can't keep up? What happens when she breaks down crying the first time someone shoots back at her?" Maria turned to face them, her dark eyes flashing with controlled fury. "What happens when your lack of accuracy gets your squad killed because you were too arrogant to respect marksmanship training? What happens when your ego makes you take unnecessary risks that compromise the mission? That's enough." Morrison slammed his hand on the desk. "This conversation is over. Miss Santos, I'm going to do you a favor and save you from a world of hurt. I'm assigning you to the medical corps where you can actually contribute something useful. Take it or leave it." Maria's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed at her to accept the compromise, to take what she could get, and be grateful for the opportunity. But something deeper, something that connected her to every woman who had ever been told she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, or tough enough, made her stand her ground. "I respectfully decline, sir. If I can't serve as a rifleman, then I don't want to serve at all." Morrison's face reddened. "Are you out of your mind? Do you have any idea how many people would kill for the opportunity I'm offering you? Medical corps personnel are valuable, respected, and safe. You're throwing away a chance at a real military career because of some fantasy about being Rambo." "I'm not throwing anything away," Maria replied calmly. "I'm refusing to accept less than what I know I'm capable of. I didn't come here to play it safe. I came here to serve my country, to the best of my abilities." The tension in the room was palpable. Morrison stared at her for a long moment, clearly struggling between admiration for her determination and frustration at her perceived stubbornness. Finally, he shook his head and made a note in her file. "Fine, have it your way. But don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made." Next, as Maria walked toward the door, she could hear the whispered comments behind her. "Stupid girl doesn't know what she's getting into. She'll be back begging for that medical position." Outside the recruitment office, Maria sat on a bench and fought back tears of frustration. She had prepared for this moment for months, studying every manual she could find, practicing until her shoulders ached from rifle recoil, conditioning her body until she could run farther and faster than most of the boys in her high school. But none of that mattered if she couldn't even get the chance to prove herself. An elderly man sitting nearby noticed her distress. He was wearing a faded military cap and had the bearing of someone who had spent decades in uniform. "Rough day at the recruitment office?" he asked gently. Maria wiped her eyes and nodded. "They won't even consider me for a rifle unit. They think I'm too small, too weak, too female to be a real soldier." The man studied her carefully. "What's your name, young lady?" "Maria Santos. I'm Colonel Harrison, retired, and I've seen a lot of soldiers in my time. The best ones weren't always the biggest or the loudest. They were the ones who had something to prove and the determination to prove it. He paused, seeming to make a decision. There's someone I think you should meet. General Patricia Williams is conducting advanced training evaluations at Fort Crawford next week. She's different from most military leadership. She believes in letting performance speak louder than prejudice. Maria looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Do you think she would listen to me? I think, Colonel Harrison said with a slight smile, that if you can back up your words with action, General Williams is exactly the person who would give you that chance. But you have to understand, if you go this route, there won't be any mercy. She'll test you harder than any male recruit because she'll know that's the only way you'll earn respect from the men you'll serve alongside. Maria stood up, her posture straightening with renewed purpose. I don't want mercy, sir. I just want a fair chance. Then I'll make a phone call, Harrison said, pulling out a worn address book. But Maria, understand this. You won't just be fighting for yourself. You'll be fighting for every young woman who comes after you. That's a heavy burden to carry. Maria thought about her mother's bleeding hands, her father's sacrifice, her younger sister, who still believed she could become anything she dreamed of being. I can handle the weight, sir. As Colonel Harrison dialed the number, Maria stared back at the recruitment office where Sergeant Morrison was probably already processing the next candidate. Soon, she promised herself, she would return to prove that some dreams are worth fighting for, regardless of what others think is possible. 1 week later, Maria stood before the imposing gates of Fort Crawford, her single duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The desert facility stretched endlessly in all directions, a maze of concrete buildings and training grounds where the military's elite were forged. Colonel Harrison had made good on his promise, securing her a spot in General Williams's special evaluation program. But he had warned her that this opportunity came with no guarantees. General Patricia Williams had earned her reputation through 3 decades of distinguished service, rising through ranks that had never welcomed women in combat roles. She was known for her unconventional methods and her willingness to challenge military traditions when they hindered effectiveness. But she was also notoriously demanding, with a failure rate that sent most candidates home within the first week. The other participants in the evaluation were already assembled when Maria arrived at the briefing room. 12 men, all with impressive military credentials, eyed her with mixtures of curiosity and skepticism. She was the only woman, the only one without prior service experience, and at 5 feet 4 inches, considerably smaller than the rest. Great, muttered a muscular soldier with sergeant stripes. Maybe she's lost, added another, earning chuckles from several others. The cheerleading tryouts are probably down the hall. Maria set her bag down and took a seat without responding, having learned from her mother that dignity was often maintained through silence rather than retaliation. She studied the room, noting the arrangement of equipment, the tactical maps on the walls, and the confidence radiating from her competitors. These men had all proven themselves in previous assignments. She was starting from zero. The door opened, and General Williams entered. She was a compact woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair pulled back severely, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Her uniform bore the insignia of multiple combat deployments, and every person in the room instinctively straightened to attention. Gentlemen, Williams began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. And, lady, welcome to the Advanced Combat Assessment Program. Over the next 5 days, you will be tested in every aspect of modern warfare. Marksmanship, tactical thinking, physical endurance, leadership under pressure, and adaptability in the face of unexpected challenges. She walked slowly between the rows of candidates, her gaze lingering momentarily on each face. When she reached Maria, her expression revealed nothing. This program has a 92% failure rate, Williams continued. Most of you will not complete all 5 days. Those who do will earn assignment to special operations units that represent the elite edge of our military capability. Those who don't should seriously reconsider their career aspirations. One of the candidates, a captain with airborne qualification badges, raised his hand. General, ma'am, What are the specific qualifications for this program? Some of us have questions about the selection criteria. Williams stopped walking and faced him directly. Captain Rodriguez, are you questioning my judgment in assembling this group? No, ma'am. But then your questions are irrelevant. Every person in this room is here because I believe they have the potential to excel in elite combat operations. Whether they actually possess that potential will be determined by their performance, not by their credentials or anyone else's preconceptions. Her eyes swept the room again. The first test begins in 1 hour. You will be conducting live-fire marksmanship trials at varying distances and under different stress conditions. Anyone who fails to meet minimum standards will be dismissed immediately. As the group filed out to prepare, Maria found herself walking beside a young lieutenant named Peterson who seemed less hostile than the others. You know, he said quietly, everyone's talking about you. Word is you've never served a day in your life, but somehow convinced Williams to let you try out for special ops. That takes either incredible confidence or incredible stupidity. Maria glanced at him. Which do you think it is? Peterson considered the question seriously. I'm hoping it's confidence. Because if Williams picked you, she must see something the rest of us don't. But you should know that some of these guys are actively rooting for you to fail. They think allowing women in combat units compromises operational effectiveness. And what do you think? I think, Peterson said as they reached the armory, that Williams didn't get where she is by making bad decisions. But you're going to have to prove yourself beyond any doubt. Being good won't be enough. You'll have to be exceptional. The shooting range was a sprawling complex, with targets set at distances from 50 to 800 yards. Each candidate would fire from multiple positions under various conditions, including simulated combat stress created by explosive charges, smoke, and time pressure. The weapons provided were standard military rifles, identical to what would be used in actual deployment. Maria watched as the first candidates took their turns. Most performed competently, hitting center mass on the majority of their targets. A few exceeded expectations, particularly Rodriguez and a Special Forces veteran named Thompson, who grouped his shots with mechanical precision. When her turn came, Maria felt the weight of every eye on the range. She approached the firing line methodically, checking her weapon, adjusting the sights, and settling into her preferred prone position. The first series of targets appeared at 200 yards, relatively close for a trained marksman, but requiring steady hands and good fundamentals. The first shot rang out, striking dead center. The second followed immediately, creating a neat hole adjacent to the first. As Maria worked through the sequence, her breathing became rhythmic, her movements fluid and automatic. Years of practice with her uncle had created muscle memory that operated independently of the pressure she felt. By the time she finished the 200-yard sequence, a murmur had started among the observers. Every shot had found the target's center, creating a cluster that would have been impressive for an experienced sniper. The targets began moving out to greater distances. At 400 yards, wind became a factor, requiring calculations that separated skilled marksmen from amateur shooters. Maria adjusted her scope, factored in the crosswind, and continued her methodical approach. Each shot struck home with devastating accuracy. Jesus, she heard someone whisper. How is she doing that? At 600 yards, only the most experienced candidates maintained consistent accuracy. The targets seemed impossibly small, requiring not just technical skill but an almost supernatural ability to read environmental conditions. Maria had reached the edge of her training range with Uncle Roberto, but she felt confident in her fundamentals. She fired carefully, taking extra time to ensure each shot was perfect. When the targets were examined, her grouping remained tight, drawing nods of approval from the range instructors. The final test came at 800 yards, a distance that challenged even military snipers. Explosive charges detonated nearby to simulate battlefield conditions, while smoke obscured vision and timing pressure was added. Of the 12 male candidates, only 3 maintained acceptable accuracy at this range. Maria settled into her position and forced herself to ignore the chaos around her. The explosions reminded her of the factory where her father had worked, where sudden noises could mean injury or death. She had learned to maintain focus amid industrial hazards. Battlefield simulation felt familiar rather than frightening. Her first shot at 800 yards struck within inches of center. The second was even closer. By her final shot, the range had gone completely silent, except for the artificial battle sounds. When the targets were retrieved and scored, General Williams examined the results without expression. She walked down the line of candidates, reviewing each performance before returning to address the group. Today's exercise separated those who can shoot from those who can fight, she announced. Marksmanship under stress is a fundamental requirement for elite operations. Several of you failed to meet minimum standards and will be departing Fort Crawford tonight. She read off 4 names, including Captain Rodriguez, who looked stunned by his elimination. Those who remain will report for physical endurance testing at 0500 hours tomorrow. Be advised that today's test was the easiest you will face. As the dismissed candidates gathered their gear, Maria felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She had survived the first cut, but tomorrow would bring new challenges that might favor size and strength over precision and determination. Sergeant Thompson, the Special Forces veteran who had performed exceptionally well, approached her as they left the range. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "When I saw you this morning, I figured Williams had lost her mind. But what you just did, that was some of the finest shooting I've ever witnessed." "Thank you," Maria replied, unsure how to respond to the unexpected respect. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My uncle taught me. He's a Vietnam veteran. He always said that marksmanship was 90% mental. If you could control your mind, you could control your shots." Thompson nodded appreciatively. "Your uncle was right. But you should know that tomorrow's tests will be different. Physical endurance, obstacle courses, tactical problem-solving under extreme fatigue. The guys you're competing against have years of conditioning and training. Are you ready for that?" Krotig. Exrited. Maria thought about her mother's 16-hour workdays, about carrying her younger siblings when they were too tired to walk, about the determination that had brought her this far. "I'll have to be." That evening, as she lay in her narrow bunk reviewing training manuals, Maria overheard conversations from the next room, where several remaining candidates were discussing strategy for the upcoming tests. "She got lucky today," one voice said clearly. "Shooting is one thing, but wait until she has to carry a full pack through 10 miles of desert. Wait until she has to complete obstacle courses designed for people twice her size." "Maybe," another voice replied. "But did you see those shots at 800 yards? In that wind, with explosions going off? I've been shooting for 15 years, and I couldn't have done that." "Doesn't matter," the first voice insisted. "Combat isn't about marksmanship contests. It's about surviving when everything goes wrong. When you're exhausted and scared, and your equipment fails. She might be able to hit targets on a calm morning, but what happens when she's been awake for 3 days and enemy fire is keeping her pinned down?" Maria closed her manual and stared at the ceiling. The doubts expressed in the next room echoed her own fears. She had exceeded expectations in the one area where her preparation was strongest. But the coming days would test aspects of readiness she could only hope to survive through determination alone. Tomorrow would reveal whether her years of preparation and unwavering resolve could overcome the physical advantages of her male competitors. The marksmanship test had earned her respect. But respect without results would mean nothing when the real challenges began. General Williams appeared in the doorway of the barracks, making her evening rounds. She paused briefly at Maria's bunk, studying the young woman's focused expression. "Santos," she said quietly. "Impressive work today. But don't let success make you overconfident. The hardest tests are still ahead." "Yes, ma'am. I understand." Williams nodded approvingly. "I hope you do. Because tomorrow we find out what you're really made of." As the general's footsteps faded down the corridor, Maria returned to her studies, determined to absorb every piece of tactical knowledge that might help her survive the trials ahead. Outside her window, the desert night was silent except for the distant sound of coyotes howling at the moon. Dawn came with the harsh blast of a military whistle, jolting the remaining 8 candidates from whatever sleep they had managed. The physical endurance test began immediately, with a 12-mile forced march through desert terrain, each candidate carrying a 60-pound pack and full combat equipment. The temperature was already climbing toward what weather reports promised would be a brutal day. Maria had prepared for this challenge as much as possible, spending months building her endurance through long runs and weighted hikes. But she knew that her smaller frame would struggle to match the longer strides and greater muscle mass of her competitors. The key would be maintaining a sustainable pace, while others burned out trying to dominate early. Sergeant Thompson set the initial pace, his military-issue boots hitting the sandy trail with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Peterson stayed close behind, while the others spread out according to their conditioning and strategy. Maria positioned herself in the middle of the pack, monitoring the group dynamics while conserving energy for the long haul. By mile 3, the first casualty occurred. Corporal Martinez, who had started aggressively, began falling back with obvious signs of heat exhaustion. By mile 5, he was forced to drop out entirely, joining the growing list of candidates eliminated from the program. The desert sun climbed higher, turning the landscape into a furnace that sapped strength with every step. Maria's pack felt heavier with each mile, but she focused on her breathing and maintained her steady rhythm. Around her, she could hear the labored breathing of competitors who had underestimated the challenge. At mile 8, another candidate dropped out. Then another at mile 10. By the time they reached the 12-mile checkpoint, only Maria, Thompson, Peterson, and 2 others remained conscious and mobile. General Williams was waiting at the finish line with medical personnel and ice-cold water. "Congratulations," she announced as the survivors collapsed in whatever shade they could find. "You've completed Phase 1 of today's evaluation. Phase 2 begins in 30 minutes. Peterson looked up from where he was sprawled on the ground. "Phase 2? General, with all due respect, what else could you possibly test today?" Williams smiled grimly. "Combat effectiveness under extreme fatigue. You'll be running tactical scenarios while dealing with the exhaustion you're experiencing right now. In real combat, the enemy doesn't wait for you to recover from forced marches. The tactical scenarios were brutal in their complexity. Each remaining candidate had to lead a simulated squad through various combat situations while dealing with equipment failures, casualty evacuation, and time pressure. The scenarios were designed to test decision-making ability when physical and mental resources were depleted. Thompson went first, performing competently but making several tactical errors that resulted in simulated casualties. Peterson followed, showing good leadership but struggling with the technical aspects of coordinated fire support. The other 2 candidates managed adequate performances with notable weaknesses. When Maria's turn came, she was operating on pure determination and muscle memory. The scenario involved rescuing wounded soldiers from a building while under sniper fire, requiring precise coordination between multiple team elements and split-second timing. Despite her exhaustion, Maria's mind remained clear and analytical. She positioned her simulated squad to provide overlapping fields of fire, designated specific roles for each team member, and established clear communication protocols. When the scenario began, she moved through the tactical problem with methodical precision. "Red team, suppress the sniper position, while blue team advances to the casualty location," she called out, her voice carrying authority that surprised everyone listening. "Green team, prepare for immediate evacuation once we have the wounded." The exercise unfolded exactly as she had planned. Her careful positioning minimized exposure to enemy fire while maximizing tactical advantages. Her clear communication kept all elements coordinated despite the chaos of simulated combat. When the scenario ended, her mission had succeeded with minimal casualties and textbook execution. General Williams observed the entire exercise without comment, but Maria caught her making detailed notes on a clipboard. The other instructors exchanged glances that suggested something significant had occurred. The final test came on the 5th day. Advanced marksmanship. under extreme conditions. Each candidate would engage targets at varying distances while completing an obstacle course designed to induce maximum physical stress. The course included rope climbs, tunnel crawls, wall scaling, and water obstacles, with shooting stations positioned throughout. By this point, only Maria, Thompson, and Peterson remained from the original 13 candidates. The attrition rate had exceeded even General Williams' expectations, eliminating soldiers with years of experience and impressive credentials. "This is it," Williams announced as they prepared for the final test. "Whoever completes this course with acceptable marksmanship scores will earn assignment to Special Operations units. Failure to meet standards means immediate dismissal from the program." Thompson went first, attacking the course with the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to physical challenges. He completed the obstacles efficiently, but his shooting suffered from the exertion. Several shots missed their marks, particularly at the longer distances where precise aim was crucial. Peterson followed, taking a more measured approach that preserved accuracy but cost valuable time. His shooting was consistently good, though not exceptional, and he finished within acceptable parameters. Maria approached the course, knowing that this was her final opportunity to prove herself. Everything she had worked for, every sacrifice her family had made, every dream of changing their circumstances, came down to the next few minutes. She began conservatively, focusing on smooth movements through the obstacles rather than maximum speed. At each shooting station, she forced herself to slow her breathing and find her natural point of aim despite the burning in her muscles and the hammering of her heart. The rope climb left her shoulders screaming, but her first shots remained centered. The tunnel crawl covered her in sand and sweat, but she maintained her focus. The wall scaling required upper body strength she barely possessed, but determination carried her over the top. At the water obstacle, Maria faced her greatest challenge. The pool was designed to be crossed while carrying full equipment, requiring swimming skills she had never needed to develop. She struggled through the water, fighting to keep her rifle dry, while managing the weight of her soaked gear. When she emerged from the pool, gasping and disoriented, she had 90 seconds to engage targets at distances up to 600 yards. Her vision was blurred with water and exhaustion. Her hands were cramping from the cold, and every muscle in her body was rebelling against continued effort. But as she settled into shooting position, something remarkable happened. The chaos around her seemed to fade into background noise. The discomfort became irrelevant. Years of training with Uncle Roberto had created an almost meditative state that she could access regardless of external conditions. Her first shot struck dead center at 200 yards. The second followed at 300 yards with equal precision. At 400 yards, she compensated for wind and scored another perfect hit. At 500 yards, shooting through mirage and battling muscle tremors, she maintained her accuracy. The final target appeared at 600 yards, positioned at the maximum range of her rifle and requiring a shot that would challenge even rested snipers. Maria knew that this single shot would determine whether months of preparation and sacrifice had been worthwhile. She controlled her breathing, calculated the ballistic factors, and squeezed the trigger with the same smooth pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The shot rang out across the desert silence, followed by the metallic ping that indicated a center hit. The range fell completely silent. General Williams lowered her binoculars and walked slowly toward the shooting position where Maria lay exhausted in the sand. Thompson and Peterson watched from the sidelines, their expressions showing newfound respect mixed with amazement. "Santos," General Williams said quietly, "in 30 years of military service, I have never seen marksmanship of that caliber under such extreme conditions. Your performance today exceeded every expectation and standard we use to evaluate special operations candidates." Maria struggled to sit up, still trying to process what had happened. "Does that mean?" "It means," Williams continued, "that you have earned assignment to the most elite marksmanship unit in our military. The 1st Special Operations Sniper Division, call sign Black Talon. You will be the first woman to serve in this unit, and based on what I've witnessed, you will excel in ways that redefine our understanding of combat effectiveness." End quote. End. Thompson approached and extended his hand to help Maria to her feet. I've been in special ops for 12 years. AI, Relieding growled. AI, he said with genuine admiration. And I've never seen shooting like that. You earned this assignment, beyond any doubt. Peterson nodded in agreement. When you walked into that briefing room 5 days ago, I thought Williams had made a mistake. Now I think she saw something the rest of us missed. You're going to do incredible things in Black Talon. General Williams handed Maria an official assignment letter along with the distinctive black insignia of the Sniper Division. Your training begins in 2 weeks at Fort Bragg. You'll be working with the finest marksmen in the world, learning techniques and technologies that most soldiers never see. But remember, you're not just representing yourself anymore. You're opening doors for others who will follow. As Maria held the insignia, feeling the weight of the metal in her palm, she thought about the recruitment office where Sergeant Morrison had dismissed her dreams. She thought about her mother working late into the night to support their family. She thought about every person who had said she wasn't strong enough, tough enough, or capable enough to serve her country in combat. General, she said, I want to make one thing clear. I didn't do this to prove that women can serve in combat roles. I did this because I knew I could excel in combat roles. The fact that I'm a woman is irrelevant to my qualifications. Williams smiled approvingly. That attitude is exactly why you succeeded where others failed. In Black Talon, we don't care about gender, background, or politics. We care about results. And your results speak louder than any argument anyone could make. 3 months later, Maria stood on a rooftop in eastern Syria, her rifle trained on a target 800 yards away. Through her scope, she could see enemy forces preparing to attack a humanitarian convoy carrying medical supplies to a besieged village. Her spotter, a veteran sniper named Collins, lay beside her providing wind readings and range confirmations. Black Talon 6, this is Black Talon 1, Collins spoke into his radio. Target acquired. Request permission to engage. Black Talon 1, you are cleared to engage. Protect the convoy. Maria controlled her breathing and felt the familiar calm that came with perfect preparation. The target was moving, requiring her to lead the shot by several feet at this distance. Wind was gusting from the east at 12 miles per hour. Temperature and humidity would affect the bullet's trajectory in calculable ways. She squeezed the trigger with the same smooth pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The shot echoed across the desert, and through her scope, she watched the enemy commander fall. Within seconds, his forces scattered, leaving the convoy free to continue its mission. Confirmed kill, Collins reported. Target neutralized. Convoy is clear to proceed. As they packed their equipment and prepared to move to their extraction point, Collins looked at his partner with the respect earned through shared danger and proven competence. You know, he said, when I heard they were assigning a woman to our unit, I had my doubts. But watching you work, you're not a female sniper. You're just a damn good sniper who happens to be female. Maria smiled as she secured her rifle. That's all I ever wanted to be. Back in Arizona, her mother received a letter with an unfamiliar military return address. Inside, she found a photograph of her daughter in military dress uniform, wearing the insignia of the Black Talon Division. The accompanying note was brief but carried the weight of fulfilled promises. Mom, remember when you used to tell me I could become anything I dreamed of being? Thank you for believing in me when no one else would. The sacrifice was worth it. Love, Maria. At Fort Crawford, General Williams maintained a wall of photographs showing graduates of her special assessment program. The newest edition showed a small, determined young woman holding a rifle and wearing the confident expression of someone who had proven that excellence knows no boundaries. Sergeant Morrison never learned that the girl he had dismissed from the recruitment office had become one of the military's most effective special operations snipers. But sometimes, when other young women came to his office requesting combat assignments, he found himself remembering the determined voice that had said, I don't want mercy. I just want a fair chance. And occasionally, very rarely, He found himself wondering what might happen if he actually gave them one.